Another dark, burned, rainy afternoon. Ah,
WHO, like the parent organization, the United Nations. And what the Trump administration has done here is incredibly significant. Now, I don't want to overstate the significance because the reality is Trump will be president for 3.5 more years. And at some point, we'll have a new president in power. And that president, if things remain as they are right now, will have the ability to re-engage with the World Health Organization and ultimately put America under control of these efforts. But this is really extending the Overton window. It's really shifting the conversation. It's having dramatic impacts internationally. And I think it sets the stage for Congress to come in here and make some of these changes permanent in the next big piece of legislation that they do.
Okay, and I want to get both your takes, but Reggie, if we're just looking at this specific treaty that was, cast out, I guess, by the U.S. just now. What were some of the main elements that you were concerned about there? If you could dig into that more deeply.
Well, okay, the International Health Regulation Amendments and the Pandemic Treaty, two different documents, have to be read together. In terms of the International Health Regulation Amendments, they talked about establishing surveillance. You look at the treaty, and it goes into One Health, meaning they're going to surveil human life, animal life, plant life, and the environment. They also talked about censorship. If you look over at the treaty, the Pandemic Treaty, it says that we are obligated, or that countries are obligated to prevent misinformation and disinformation, which is not just censoring it afterwards; it's stopping it from happening to begin with. And then the International Health Regulations establish a worldwide interoperable international system of digital IDs. Which they say are for the sake of health, but if you go over to the World Economic Forum website, you can see a chart of what I believe is the full intent of the digital ID, which is that you're going to need one to open a bank account, to access healthcare, to travel, to buy and sell online, to own a communications device like a cell phone or a laptop, to vote, to access government benefits. It's going to control every aspect of life on Earth, and I'm so glad that the United States has rejected this.
Yeah, a lot of this information, as you pointed to, is really out there in the public sphere, yet not too many people know about it in such depth. Alex, once again, drawing on your ongoing research in this area, is there anything that you would add to this in terms of the treaty or the other agreement?
Well, I think Reggie's right on the money here. This really sets the stage between the International Health Regulation Amendments and the International Pandemic Treaty or Accord or Agreement. They call it different things at different times depending on who they're talking to. That really lays the groundwork for a global totalitarian system to control humanity under the guise of public health. And Reggie touched on something that's really, really significant that very few people have looked at yet, and that is the whole One Health idea. What they're doing here is they're conflating human health with animal health and the health of the environment. This is a very, very dangerous way. It is, of course, collectivist in that we no longer take the individual's health as the priority. Rather, we take the health of the group. But even beyond that, we're now talking not just about humans, but also about animals and the environment. And so I've spoken with some of the top leaders of the WHO about this very issue. They say now climate change, for example, is a public health concern, and we need to deal with these issues like we dealt with COVID. In other words, with massive emergency powers for governments working through the WHO to exercise control over our lives. And as Robert F. Kennedy pointed out very, very clearly in his statement denouncing this thing, he said the influence of the big pharmaceutical companies, various hostile foreign governments like the Communist Chinese, is very, very pronounced. We saw the cataclysm that was produced during the COVID pandemic.
And China puts out more
that doesn't happen again.
pollution than
Very
anybody.
encouraging, incredibly dangerous mechanisms that the WHO is working on. Very, very good news that the United States is not going to be participating.
Bedouin fighters cleared from the predominantly Druze region. This bloodshed underscores the challenge al-Sharaa faces as he tries to stitch back together a country of different sectarian and ethnic groups, which
You
has
can't
seen
trust that
14
guy.
years of conflict. US envoy Tom Barrack said Syria is at a, quote, critical juncture where peace and dialogue must prevail.
U.S. Special Envoy Tom.
Can we? That's not. America is not here to compel Israel to do anything. We're here to use our influence to bring calm minds together to come to a conclusion. The U.S. has no business in trying to compel Israel to do anything.
Barrack. Mubarak arrived in Lebanon on Sunday to push forward a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hezbollah.
Maxwell is now in federal prison.
She is the Rosetta Stone. She knows everything. She arranged every single trip with everybody. She knows everything. And if she were just given use immunity, she could be compelled to testify. I'm told that she actually would be willing to testify, and there'd be no reason for her to withhold any information.
House Republicans have laid the groundwork for a vote calling for the release of all the Epstein files within 30 days. The Director of National Intelligence is making strong accusations against former Obama administration officials. Tulsi Gabbard says she has evidence the Obama team manufactured evidence leading to the FBI investigation of President Trump and Russia. She said it's based on a request by President Obama for an intelligence assessment on how Moscow affected the outcome of the 2016 election.
There's no question in my mind that this intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered be published, which contained a manufactured intelligence document. It's worse than even politicization of intelligence. It was manufactured intelligence that sought to achieve President Obama and his team's objective, which was undermining President Trump's presidency and subverting the will of the American people.
On CBS's Face the Nation, Democrat and the ranking member of the House Intelligence Committee, Congressman Jim Himes, says there's no basis for prosecution.
What you saw from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, was not just a lie, but a very dangerous lie, because when you start throwing around language like sedition and treason, somebody's going to get hurt.
Gabbard says she is referring the case to the Department of Justice and she'll be releasing more documents in the coming days. Turning now to the Pentagon, the U.S. military is seeing a major turnaround in recruiting, with all 6 branches of the military meeting or exceeding goals. CBN National Security reporter Caitlin Burke brings us the story.
After years of falling short of the target and growing concern over the future, military recruiters are finally seeing a surge, not just in interest, but enlistments.
We've seen momentum unlike we have seen in probably a decade.
This year, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Space Force all meeting recruiting goals months ahead of time. The Marines and Coast Guard remain on track to hit theirs as well.
Enthusiasm to serve is at all-time highs. Since November 5th, 2024, the U.S. military has seen the highest recruiting percentage of mission achieved in 30 years.
Chief Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell leads a recruitment task force with the mission to continue removing recruiting obstacles and build on current momentum.
How do we set the conditions here culturally in this country to have more kids want to serve the country and see it as a viable career path?
Various factors appear to be responsible for this welcome growth. They range from modernization efforts to consecutive increases in military pay, plus new programs aimed at helping prepare prospective enlistees for service. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth also attributes the turnaround to a change in leadership.
Under the previous administration, they lowered the recruiting goals so they could look like they were filling the ranks, but they actually couldn't even meet the lowered recruiting goals. And this administration, with higher recruiting goals, we're beating them 4 to 5 months ahead of time because the American people want to serve.
Hegseth argues past recruiting struggles resulted from what he calls a weak and woke agenda under the Biden administration. He's pledging a reset, one that puts the warfighter first and returns the military's focus to strength, discipline, and mission readiness. Caitlin Burke, CBN News, Washington.
We take you now to the world of professional golf, and American Scotty Scheffler,
whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us from your hand, O King. But if not, let it be known to you, O King, that we do not serve your gods, nor will we worship the gold image which you have set up. Every time I read that speech, I stand a little straighter and a little stronger. I don't know about the rest of you. I'm tired of Christians always being the victim. We aren't the victims, we're the victors. And the only difference between being a victim and a victor is knowing God.
Ultimately, keeping the government funded is good for the country, and hopefully we'll have bipartisan cooperation to do that. But if their recent track record is any indication, they're under a tremendous amount of pressure from that far left wing of the Democrat Party to shut the government down.
Senate Republicans have already expressed their willingness to skip the August recess in order to finish their legislative duties.
Is it really fair to the American people that we don't have people in place in agencies who are able to address their concerns, who are able to answer their questions, who are able to make a federal government run more smoothly? Because the way they're acting, they don't seem to care much about the American people being able to have a government that's going to work smoothly.
This week, the Senate will have a full Senate floor vote on their version of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Appropriations Bill, which received bipartisan support to come out of committee. The vote will gauge whether Democrats are willing or not to obstruct the funding battle. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
And Ecuador to charges of international drug and weapons trafficking. Known as Fito, Jose Adolfo Marcias Villamar was handed over to U.S. authorities today. Secretary of State Marco Rubio took to X to announce his extradition. Rubio posted, quote, "The Trump administration remains committed to ending the scourge of narco trafficking." He also thanked Ecuadorian President Daniel Noboa. Macias escaped last year from an Ecuadorian prison where he was serving a 34-year sentence for multiple convictions. He was recaptured last month. The Department of Justice says that under Macias' direction, his Los Toneros gang committed violent acts against law enforcement, politicians, lawyers, prosecutors, and civilians. Ecuador's government says the gang exercises vast control over the nation's prisons. A second suspect has been arrested following the shooting of an off-duty Customs and Border Patrol agent in New York City. The Department of Homeland Security says that both suspects are in the country illegally. NTD correspondent Jason Blair reports.
Two suspects have been arrested after an off-duty Customs and Border Patrol agent was shot in a New York City park. Both suspects crossed into the country illegally and both have had court orders to be removed since 2023, according to DHS Secretary Kristi Noem.
Our officer was off duty on Saturday evening when him and his friend were attacked. They were attacked by two individuals that were set on robbing them.
The officer is recovering from his wounds.
Thankfully, he had his service weapon with him and was able to defend himself and his friend and injured one of those individuals that was trying to do them harm.
The wounded suspect was later identified and arrested after walking into a hospital to treat his wounds from the incident. Noem says that he has a long criminal history.
Arrested 4 different times in New York City, and because of the mayor's policies and was released back to do harm to people and to individuals living in this city.
On Monday, a second suspect was arrested, who's due to appear in federal court on Monday. Noem says he also has a criminal record. Noem and White House Board Czar Tom Homan blame, quote, sanctuary city policies for these suspects being released after their previous arrests.
Every sanctuary city is unsafe. I'll say it again, sanctuary cities are sanctuaries for criminals. And I'm going to work very hard for Secretary Noem to keep President Trump's promise and his commitment several weeks ago that sanctuary cities are now our priority.
They're protecting criminals who go out and murder, rape, rob. They perpetuate violence on our children. They traffic them and drugs and damage this country every single day.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams reacts to the shooting.
You know how outraged I am because of Andrew's bail reform laws. So I am extremely angry that we have a Customs Border Patrol officer that is in the hospital because a person that should have not been on our street was on our street.
Noem says that assaults on federal agents have risen nearly 700%. She says that people are trying to reveal their identities with the intention to intimidate and threaten them and their families. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Jason Blair, NTD News.
The acting head of Immigration and Customs Enforcement says his agency is ramping up enforcement not just on illegal immigrants, but also on the American companies that hire them. Speaking on CBS Face the Nation.
Not only are we focused on those individuals that are, working here illegally, we're focused on these American companies that are actually exploiting these laborers, these people that came here for a better life, either, forced labor, child trafficking. A lot of these worksite cases just isn't a victimless crime of someone here working illegally. And that's why we're going there with these criminal warrants to focus on these American businesses that are trying to make an extra dollar on the backs of these people that came here for a better life.
Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons made those comments yesterday. Meanwhile, Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass yesterday criticized the Trump administration. Bass says it undermines accountability and sends the wrong message to local law enforcement. The LA mayor argued that LAPD officers identify themselves openly and don't use masks. ICE has defended the practice, saying it protects agents and their families from
Yeah,
retaliation.
look at the guy that got shot.
Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth welcomed the president of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., to the Pentagon today. Marcos is in the U.S. to meet with the Trump administration and secure a trade deal. Here's Hegseth.
Likewise. Our storied alliance has never been stronger or more essential than it is today. And together we remain committed to the Mutual Defense Treaty. And this pact extends to armed attacks on our armed forces, aircraft, or public vessels, including our Coast Guards, anywhere in the Pacific, including the South China Sea.
The Philippine president will meet with Trump tomorrow. He hopes to negotiate a more favorable trade deal before the August 1st deadline. Marcos will be the first Southeast Asian leader to meet Trump in his second term. Trump has
Good afternoon, Don. Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt just moments ago celebrated the accomplishments of the first 6 terms of President Trump's second term. Leavitt touted Trump's administration as the most transparent in history and congratulated the president on securing the border. Take a look.
Inflation is now running at a 2.1% annual rate. You look at our southern border, look at the numbers. Just last month, 0 illegal aliens were released into our country. And then look at what the president has done on the world stage. He has ended wars like India and Pakistan. He continues to work aggressively to end the war in Russia and Ukraine. He completely obliterated Iran's nuclear sites.
Press Secretary Leavitt also highlighted President Trump's abolishing DEI from the government and military, stopping chemical castration of minors, and ending men and women's sports. Don?
And Mari, on Friday, the Director of National Intelligence released some declassified documents from 2016. What's the update on that?
Yes, Don. On Sunday, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, confirmed that she made criminal referrals to the FBI and DOJ, the Department of Justice, about the findings of the documents she released on Friday. Gabbard's office says that the declassified documents it released show new evidence that the Obama administration, quote, manufactured and politicized intelligence to lay the groundwork for what was essentially a years-long coup against President Trump. The newly released documents state that in the months leading up to the November 2016 election, the intelligence community assessed that Russia was not trying to influence the election using cyber means. The report adds that, despite that assessment, in the months following the election, Obama officials leaked false statements to media outlets claiming that Russia attempted to hack the election. Here's the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, talking about these documents. Take a look.
Over 100 documents that we released on Friday really detail and provide evidence of how this treasonous conspiracy was directed by President Obama just weeks before he was due to leave office, after President Trump had already gotten elected. This is not a Democrat or Republican issue. This is an issue that is so serious it should concern every single American, because it has to do with the integrity of our democratic republic.
Since the release of these documents on Friday, President Trump on Truth Social has praised Tulsi Gabbard for her work in exposing what he calls the, quote, highest level of election fraud. Today, Gabbard just announced that they're now releasing over 200,000 MLK assassination files. Don, back to you.
Okay, Mari, thank you so much. In Montreal, New York, the charges come after the suspect reported his child missing Saturday. New York State Police provided more details this afternoon.
The child was identified as Melina Fratolin, age 9, and the caller as her father, Luciano Fratolin, age 45. The New York State Police and Warren County Sheriff's Office immediately responded to the area of Exit 22 of the Northway and initiated an investigation in an attempt to locate Melina. On Sunday, July 20th, a search detail comprised of officers from multiple agencies conducted an organized search in the town of Ticonderoga, New York. In an area Mr. Fratolin was suspected of having visited. During that search detail, at approximately 10:50, members of the New York State Police Forest Rangers located Melina deceased in the shallow portion of a pond.
Police said the father and daughter had been on vacation in the U.S. since July 11th. They had been expected back in Montreal over the weekend. According to police, the girl had been living in Montreal with her mother. Authorities said the couple has been estranged since 2019. A not guilty plea was entered on the suspect's behalf at arraignment. Autopsy results are expected later today. Coming up, battery maker
Antifa.